Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Teresa and today I will be teaching you how to make a Wonky Star block. This by far is one of my most favorite blocks to make, and it is featured in one of my patterns called Early Dawn Sparkles, so you can check out my Etsy shop in the description. And this block is one of my favorites because it's actually very forgiving. I have very shaky hands and I don't even know how I thread a needle sometimes, but for some reason, this block is really easy for me to make. So if I can do it with my trembling hands, anybody can make this block. So let's get started. First, you're going to need 8 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares of your background fabric. I'm using the white with the white swirls. Then you will need your fabric for your stars. So depending on what colors you want to use for your stars, you can use scraps from your stash. I'll be using multicolors from my stash, but you need at least one 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch square for the center block on each star. Go ahead and lay out your squares in rows of 3 by 3 using your star square in the center and surrounding that square with your background squares. As you can see, we have a basic 9-patch layout. Go ahead and pause the video, and once you're caught up, go ahead and hit play. For this next step, we're going to go ahead and move these 4 corner pieces out of the way. These are going to stay plain, so we don't need to fuss with those right now. Now we're going to use our 4 background squares. Those are the only ones that we're going to need to fuss with right now. I'm going to leave my body of my star for the tutorial purposes. So the next step is to take your scrap fabric piece, do pretty side to pretty side, and the piece that's closest to the body of the star, I like to make sure that that crosses over at least the halfway point on your background square. Think of that as the thigh of the star, and then this is going to be the point. And to check to make sure if you're using smaller pieces of scrap, I take a ruler. You can use a piece of cardboard or something, but here's where your stitch line is going to be. That's your seam allowance. Go ahead and flip that back, and you just want to make sure that that covers this bottom corner piece. Now go ahead and do that with the rest of your 4 pieces, like so. And they don't have to be perfect. Some can be shorter than others. I don't like the way that one looks. Let's go like that. And you want to be mindful on the top also, because if you do your point too far up, let's do an example. Take your ruler and you'll see when you fold this back, now it covers your bottom corner, but then it also comes right up into here, and this is going to be the outside side of your block once it's finished. When you sew this into a project, you're going to sew your 1/4 inch seam, so you're going to lose some of that point, which is, you know, it's okay, but I like to just be mindful of that. So I try not to take my point too far up on my scrap or my background fabric. Okay, so now that you've got all your scrap pieces laid out, go ahead and pause the video and take these pieces to your machine and go ahead and stitch them down. Okay, so now I'm back and I chain stitched all my pieces together. So you got to go in, and it's basically just feeding one in after the other without removing the first piece from the machine. So you got to trim up your little squares if you did that. Now I'm going to just move our body of our star out of the way. So the next step that you're going to do, let me get those out of the way, is I like to go ahead and press my squares to set my seam. And I'm going to flip my color side back and press it again. And then you're going to do this with all 4 of your pieces. Now you can go ahead and use your scissors, or I like to use my ruler and my rotary cutter because I have extremely shaky hands. So this helps me kind of keep my lines straight most of the time. And you're going to go ahead and trim off that little corner. And I like to flip this piece back and trim where my seam ends also. Get that out of the way. Just it reduces the bulk. So you're going to go ahead and repeat these steps with the other 3 pieces. Now that you have all 4 of your pieces trimmed up, go ahead and lay them back out next to your body of your star. And then we're just going to repeat the same step for the other leg. And you just want to make sure that your piece kind of overlaps there a little bit. I like to make sure it overlaps. And you're going to do this with all of your pieces again, and then stitch those down. So now this time you're going this way, your point will be on the opposite side of this point, and then your thigh down here. Go ahead and pause the video, and when you're done stitching, we'll meet up. Okay, so once again, I did my chain stitching. So I can just feed one after the other into my machine. And then we're going to go ahead and repeat the steps all over again. And we're going to go ahead and press. And then fold our colored piece back, or our star leg. Fold it back. And again, with your ruler or your scissors, go ahead and trim up your squares. And trim off your little back piece to reduce the bulk. Now that we're done trimming up all our squares, let's go ahead and bring the body of our star back down. And then we're going to go ahead and lay out our 9 patch. So let's put our legs on. And then now we can go ahead and bring in our 4 corner pieces. And from here, you're going to go ahead and sew it together like you would a 9 patch. I start with the left. I pick up my piece, make sure your print side or pretty side is up, and you're going to flip it over and put it on top of that. Same here, and then same here. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the machine and stitch our seam down on the left side. We're not going to do this side yet. We're just going to do the left side. And if you want to pin it just so that you don't forget which way when you get, because it gets confusing when you get to the machine. You're like, oh man, which side was I supposed to stitch down? So it does help to go ahead and pin them if you want to. I don't, because they're just so short, and I've made plenty of these that and I take my time. So go ahead and pause the video and we'll meet up back here. Okay, now I went ahead and chain stitched those 3 down. And I'm going to go ahead and press these open. I just like to press to keep my seams to lay flat. Makes it a little easier. center block. Yeah. Okay. Now that you've done that, we're going to go ahead and lay our little 9 patch back out again. And then this time we're going to take pretty side, flip it over on top of that one, flip it over atop the center, and then flip it over here. And then this time we'll be stitching down on this side. So go ahead and pause the video and we will meet up back here when we're done. Okay, now that I got those all stitched down, trim my little string, and once again I'm going to bring my iron over, set my seams, and then flip it over. Set my seam. You'll notice how when I flipped this one over, the seam kind of flipped underneath towards the center. So both seams are going in. That's good because then this one, the seams kind of are automatically going outwards. They're going to kind of want to go its own direction, so just don't force it. That way your seams, when you go to stitch these rows together, you should be able to fill where your seams are. Okay, now we can go ahead and lay our rows back so you know that this is the center. Doesn't really matter which one goes on top or which one goes on bottom. Now you're going to go ahead and flip this one over and you're going to stitch up on top. And you should be able to fill where your seams are because you'll feel that bulk right there. But if you're not sure, again, I like to use my ruler for checking everything. And then you flip it back and we look good. And then you can go ahead and pin it and take it to the machine, or just hold on to it and go stitch it down. Go ahead and pause the video and we'll meet back here. Now that we got those two pieces stitched down together, I'm going to go ahead and press my seam. And then go ahead and open it up. Whichever way it wants to fall, I kind of usually just let it. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and take our last half and flip it over, pretty side to pretty side, and take this and stitch it down and we'll be done. Let's meet back up here. Okay, so now I'm back from my machine and now I'm going to go ahead and press my seams and open it up. And now all our block is all stitched down in all the right places and ready to go into a quilt or a pot holder, whatever your project you have planned for it. And voila, isn't that beautiful? These are my favorite blocks to do. They're a little forgiving because they don't need to be perfect. Of course, your seams need to be pretty on point or you're going to end up with a different size. But with the 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares that we used, our unfinished block size is going to be 6.5 by 6.5. Now, once you put this into a quilt or make a pot holder out of it and you sew these seams, will make it a 6 by 6 inch finished block. So keep that in mind. So with the raw edges, you're going to have 6.5 by 6.5. Once it's sewn into a project, it'll be a 6-inch by 6-inch block. And this is one that I did with using the same color for my stars. So you can see that it really doesn't matter what you put into it. It is just such a cute block to do, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button and share with a friend that might find it useful. Till the next tutorial, bye.